You're listening to The Crunch with Cam Slater, right here on RCR, Reality Check Radio.
GILDA KIRKPATRICK is an Iranian-born New Zealand author, creative director, and television personality. She starred as a main housewife on The Real Housewives of Auckland, which aired on Bravo. She was also the first contestant to be eliminated from Dancing with the Stars in 2018. She also wrote 2 educational series of sci-fi comic books called Asterons. But more recently, she's entered the fray on Twitter and other social media and amassed thousands of followers. Let's hear what she has to say about her journey and the state of play in politics today. Welcome to The Crunch.
Thank you, Cam. Thanks for having me.
Well, I've been following you on Twitter for a while, and we've had a couple of private messages backwards and forwards on various issues, and then I saw the spy article that Ricardo did in the Herald, and there was a couple of things that were mentioned in there, and I thought, I need to get Gilda on my show, because I think that the Herald only sort of kind of touched on some of the aspects there. They were more focused on your soirees, as they described them, with the various politicians. So, I just wanted to get you on the show so we can talk a little bit about your background, how you found the freedom movement, and now why you're getting involved actively in politics.
Well, to be fair, I've been here for 33 years, and throughout the years, I've always kind of been involved, whether it's been going to the fundraisings or actually knowing the politicians, meeting them in social settings, or following their policy just out of my own interest. So I kind of 27 years, I think, or something like that, I've been involved. And then while I was studying, I also, as a student, when you're, at uni, you kind of get involved anyway, because it is just what, younger people do. So I've never been that far. However, I think in the media, the focus has been more on my social life and, going to charities and things like that, rather than the actual political involvement.
So you came here 33 years ago. That's 1990, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's after the revolution in Iran.
Yes, that's after the war.
Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit about that? What prompted you to come to New Zealand? What prompted your family to come to New Zealand? And what drove that?
Well, actually, I came here with my sister. And at the time, she was, before we came to New Zealand, she was overseas and studying physics engineering. And then at that point I was 16 and my high school kind of was done, and we were like looking for somewhere to go and study. And obviously, the first place comes in mind are countries that you already speak their language, and New Zealand was English, so we don't have to go and study for 2 years in order to understand what's going on or go and study. So we came to New Zealand, and at the time it wasn't that hard to come in. It was a very safe country for 2 girls without our family, without my mom and dad, to migrate here. And we've been here since. We both studied here and got our degrees, and we've always worked very hard, and we have married local people and have children. So we kind of lived most of our adult lives in New Zealand.
Yeah. But it must have been a bit of a shock coming from a post-revolution Iran to New Zealand.
Well, of course, especially, having witnessed the revolution, how things changes literally overnight, and then going straight into a bloody war for 8 years. It kind of, as a child, you can't help but, it just sinks into your psyche. You can't help but notice, how politics works, geopolitics works, how, the relation between different countries affects their people and their financial situation, or, how the wars come about. It's very earlier on, you kind of become very switched on about what goes on, and you start living in a reality that's a bit different to what a child is supposed to usually understand. But then again, it becomes part of your life. And for example, me or my sister, we've never managed to separate, what goes on globally and politically from our everyday lives, because we know how it can affect and changes your life.
Because, the revolution and then the war afterwards had a huge impact on Iran in terms of taking away freedoms and those sorts of things. Has that coloured your thinking, particularly around what happened during COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. They say once bitten, twice shy. Once you've gone through that sort of change and you've experienced it, how hopeless it is to have other people make all your decisions for you, and you're basically this zombie that has to go through these motions of living without having any choice. So it's kind of, it worries you all the time, but even more so when you have children, even more so once you've left the country that you love and your own land and, your family, and migrate somewhere else for a better life, for a life that you can have choices, that you can have a say, that you can vote and choose your future, or even participate. It might not happen that you go and vote, but at least you know that you can participate. You have that freedom. To me, especially now that I have 2 children here, it's extremely important. And to see that those freedoms and rights and all that kind of get jumbled away and for the greater good, it concerns me, because I already know, and I lived under that situation where, it was about the Islamic world. It was about the expansion of Shia Islam. It was about, control over certain countries in the Middle East. It was about control of power. And then, they use that as an excuse, and they take your very basic freedom as a human being away. And as we saw during COVID, as human beings, we couldn't go and seek certain operations if we weren't vaccinated. We were locked in our own home. They would say, oh, you can't, drive to, an hour away. You can't do this, you can't do that for the greater good. So although the difference is, there's a big difference, but as an outcome, it's exactly the same thing. It is not giving value to your freedom as a human being without any, right reasoning.
Do you think New Zealanders take their freedom for granted?
I think they did, but I think what happened with COVID woke a lot of people up. People who, usually minded their own business and really didn't have any interest in politics. People usually, if they live in a beautiful country and they have a good lifestyle, or generally they don't care about international politics. They believe in their politicians because they're like, oh, we voted for them. They're after our best interest. And something like COVID happens, and they wake up that, oh, hang on a minute, it actually doesn't work like that. And traditionally, maybe to a lesser extent, but as the world is becoming more of a one entity, the pressure that comes from for the greater good concept, implicated and sort of dictated to the government around the world as like an advisor. Oh, we are all moving towards this, but at the end of the day, it's not something that the people of New Zealand, for example, woke up one day and came to the conclusion that, hey, this is better for our society. It's somebody else with certain ideologies sitting somewhere and has influence over our politician that we voted in. And that kind of global thinking, to me, is like religious expansion, religious thinking. It derives from an ideology.
Yeah.
So that scares me. I don't like that. That's why I'm kind of, and I've noticed that after the COVID, a lot of Kiwis have woken up to it. People who had no idea about what goes on. They used to think, oh, UN goes to certain war zones and stops the war. They had extremely basic idea about the involvement of these international organizations and entities who are putting all these agendas out and rules out, which our politicians also participate in. People weren't aware of that, and luckily a lot of people have woken up. A lot are still very kind of hesitant to get their head around, the power of these organizations, and they don't want to accept it, and they think it's a conspiracy theory. But none of these organizations are shy about it. In fact, you can read everything that they are planning, and our government's involvement, our politicians' involvement on their website, their profiles are all there. There is nothing conspiracy about it. It's not a theory. It's a plan in action that's happening, and our politicians are involved. What is wrong with talking about it?
That's the thing, isn't it? They are very open about it. The WEF,
Absolutely.
For example, they say they boast about penetrating the cabinets and having politicians that they control and coming up with policies like what the agriculture policy that they implemented in Sri Lanka, for example, which destroyed the economy. They're doing this, and they're quite open about it. And if only people would wake up and see it. I guess it's the role of people like yourself with your following on Twitter, and our role here at Reality Check Radio is to educate people that there are some people out there that are not politicians, that aren't elected, that want to control everything, from money to the way that you interact, to what you eat, to the way you behave.
And they're extremely open about it. Nobody's hiding it. This whole attitude that some people have, at the moment you start talking about something bigger than, our own parliament, they get all like, oh my God, you're crazy. What are these things you're saying? And they really do not go and read for themselves. It takes half a day out of your life. Go and understand it. I don't have problem with certain policies that are putting out there because we are overpopulated, etc. But the way they're going about it is worrisome. It's very worrying for me, who's a mother of 2 children. And our politicians, somehow, they don't talk about it either. Their names are on their websites, their pictures on their websites. Our Ministry of Health is taking direct orders from World Health Organization. So why not talk about it? Why the moment we open our mouth, we are ridiculed and pushed back by saying, oh, these conspiracy theorists are talking again. What is conspiracy about it? I have yet to see somebody come and explain to me why is this categorized under conspiracy theory, or this word they use, anti-vaxxer. I mean, myself and my children, all my family, we've had every vaccination available for human beings all our lives. Even when you go travel to Africa or India, all this vaccination that you have to get. My children, have had everything. So myself, but one refusal for something that we were unsure about because it kind of came out a bit too quick, and we didn't even know really about the nature of this disease. And what we were hearing from these experts who got prizes all their lives, they've got doctorates and professors, and they've written all these medical journals. They were telling us that, hey, hang on a minute, it actually is this, and they were guiding people, but they were all like censored, and any question we raised was ridiculed. Why? Because a politician told you that it's a good thing. It turns out that it wasn't.
Yeah, it does turn out. Well, those of us who said no, we want to choose, and we're choosing no, they labeled us, they demonized us, they segregated us. They brought in a system where there was 2 classes of citizens in New Zealand. I mean, who would have ever thought that would have happened in New Zealand?
Yeah, it is just the things they did get away with. Still, I'm baffled. And it did happen overnight. And, I remember, all my friends and, people who knew me, they always used to ask me about the revolution in Iran, and what went from a country so advanced and so, civilized to all of a sudden women were like not even have no rights. And, how did that transition happen? And I would say it happened overnight. And people would think that I'm exaggerating. But when things happen based on ideology under absolute power. We saw what happened here. Overnight, we were locked in our own homes with one case of COVID. The whole country went under lockdown. And when you think about it, I'm still healthy. My family are healthy. All my friends who didn't vaccinate are healthy. We don't get sick. Nothing happened to us. However, I have all these friends who are vaccinated and some people that I worked with. They are now saying that, oh my God, why am I getting so sick? Why am I continuously catching cold? And they're all trying to boost their immune system. But nobody talks about that. What about us? We were supposed to be dead by now. But they're not. So at the end of the day, any rational mind would look and say, okay, well, they have a point. Maybe. But no, people are just, some, not all, ignore it. They don't talk about it. They think if they ignore it, it will go away. It won't go away. It was the experience that we went through, and it was very public. It's part of our history now.
At what stage of the COVID mess did you decide, I've had enough, I'm going to go to Wellington? I mean, you live in a very nice house in one of the best suburbs in Auckland, and you saw some people there camping in Parliament. At what stage did you say, that's it, I have to go down there, I have to be there?
It was in the first couple of, I think I was there on day 3. And I watched the coverage of the media and how the presenters were ridiculing people, and how, on social media, people were attacking people, saying anti-vaxxer, conspiracy theory, foil heads. Really disrespectfully, they were talking to this group of people that actually had enough, rational thinking and sort of research to go there and say, and they had enough respect for their autonomy and their human rights to go and, leave their homes, stay in their cars, go in the middle of cold to live in a tent by the parliament. And I saw these people getting ridiculed, and, I thought I can, as a citizen of New Zealand and somebody who's the mother of 2 children in this country, I can ignore my fellow citizens. I will go and help if that's going to give it a more balanced coverage, because they were saying, well, these people are filthy and are smelly and are this and fringe of the society. And for years and years, as you know yourself, I've been in the media, and everybody, and I kind of know basically all the people who are of this society, and I've been, friends with a lot of politicians and for years, so they can stick that label to me. I'm not a fringe, some, smelly, God knows who, that they labeled these people. So I went there, and I think it was the first time that I actually, so I had a phone call from some of my friends who are in yachting, and they said, well, are you going? We'll go. And I was like, okay. So we went, and I think Jason Harrison, he said that he was coming. And all of a sudden, the first, kind of normal article came out on the sports section, I think of Herald it was, that said that I was going and so was going and so and so. And then once I was there, Heather Duplessis Allen gave me an interview on the radio. And so I kind of felt that, and people were making fun, oh, is Gilda gone there? Has she got a box? Has she got a limousine? Has she got this and that? That's fine. You can talk about it and have fun on my expense. But at the end of the day, I felt that I gave it a little bit of exposure and took away that sort of taboo that was attached. And people were like, I had a whole bunch of people from Auckland who are very well connected, super wealthy, super well educated. They all came down after I went there. They didn't stay for the whole 3 weeks, but they came for 2 days, 3 days, 1 day, at least they showed face. So, and I think the treatment of people during that time in Wellington, it was despicable. And, I would hate to see that again happening.
Yeah, I was watching, live streaming. I was watching Chantel Baker and other people live streaming. And I was getting angrier and angrier and angrier that our media were working hand in glove, lockstep with the government. They were standing up there beside the politicians in Parliament buildings and not going and talking to the protesters. I mean, every other protest that's there, whether it's Greenpeace or school kids, doing whatever, the politicians come out and talk to them, and they are willing to meet with them. They cover them. They get a spokesperson on the television. They do all of those sorts of things. And what we saw here was an unwillingness of the media and the politicians in the parliament to go and talk to some people who had genuine grievances. And it angered me. And so, actually one of your neighbours is a mate of mine, and he said, well, I've got a plane. Let's go down to Wellington. And so we all piled into his plane, and we had another guy with a plane. There's a whole lot of us. We flew down to Wellington. A friend picked us up at Parapram Airport and drove us to the protest. And, we stayed there for 3 days. And what I found when I got there is that it was nothing like the media had claimed. There wasn't filthy, dirty people. People were, organised. There wasn't any rubbish. People were being nice to each other. It wasn't a rowdy, horrible protest with lots of, white supremacists and angry, violent people. It was ordinary Kiwis who were frustrated.
I mean, you saw it yourself. It was the most diverse community. There were some extremely sort of kind people who were donating. Like, I could help just by sort of getting some fuel, for that, just basic things. But they were actually cooking and, had shifts, making coffee all day, making different type of food. It was amazing. People were bringing organic stuff from their farms, donating. And there were of all walks of life and race in that community. And a lot of those people actually were traditionally voters for Labour and to see or the Greens. And for them, it was such a disappointing sort of wake up to reality call. And, it didn't help that politicians like Michael Wood, who are getting handsomely paid while everybody else has to shut their businesses and get kicked out of their, jobs, etc. For him, his paycheck was still coming in to go and take the mic in the parliament and call this very diverse group of voters and taxpayers to call us, a river of filth. River of filth. I mean, like, who with an ounce of respect for human beings and human dignity would come out and say such thing as I might go and call a group of people idiots or whatever, but as a somebody who is in the parliament, that people have voted and are paying for your wages, you're not a private citizen, to go and stand there and call these people. You can see with your own eyes, they're just ordinary people like me. Why are you calling us, river of filth? What kind of a language? And then Mr. Mallard, with saturating people, there were children amongst those people, the police's brutality. It was, I saw it with my own eyes. I wasn't watching somebody's feed. I wasn't looking at TV, hearing from reporters. I was there on the ground myself, and I was witnessing what was happening. Inexcusable, really. The most disappointing thing for me was that really no opposition came down there, except Peters, and I think Mike King came down, and Winston Peters. And then I think David Seymour kind of came. He didn't come inside, but he was down there talking to some, shop owners or cafe owners. Yeah. And he got attacked and by the media, that how dare you go down there and talk to us. It's like, what is wrong with us? We don't have leprosy. We are, not contagious. We are a healthy group of people. We all pay taxes. We are, voters. What have we done for us to, be so judgmental about us? It was like I lost my respect a lot to a lot of media personalities, about a lot of journalists that were twisting the facts and truth, and the manipulation that I saw myself, and I worked it out, and at the time I put it online that they were manipulating Twitter, a lot of bot accounts so it was very ugly. I'm glad that it's over, but at the same time I don't feel like it's been properly addressed by the oppositions or people in charge like, Chris Hopkins and Ashley,
Bloomfield, yeah.
Yeah, Bloomfield.
So have you seen River of Freedom, the film that's just been released?
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
Right.
I've seen parts of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing yet. Unfortunately, I haven't managed to get myself there.
I went to the premiere, and it's a beautiful film, and it encapsulates the feeling that I felt when I was there, and it stands in stark contrast to the other documentaries that have been released, like the Stuff, Fire and Fury thing, which I didn't see any of what they were saying in Fire and Fury. All I saw was people that were hurting, that wanted to be heard, and the violence that was brought to the Parliament protest was brought by the police and not anybody else.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Has that scarred you to the point where you feel that you need to be engaged and get some of these politicians around to your house so that we can understand why they did certain things, or to hold them to account? Because, I mean, you've had David Seymour at your house, you've had Winston Peters, you've had Simon O'Connor. Winston Peters obviously wasn't one of those who refused to talk. He was one who did. Tell us about those meetings you've had at your house and what you've discovered by having them there.
Well, I had Matt Kings too, very earlier on in the year. I just feel like a lot of people that I have around and people that I know, they are showing interest. They want to know. Unfortunately, their trust in media is gone. And what media shows, the interviews with the politicians, it really, you don't really hear the questions you want. You know, it's all like baiting each other, answering each other. You know, the interviewer is fighting with the. So it's not very. It's kind of like got you.
Journalism, yeah, got you journalism, yeah.
Yeah, it's a sensational got you journalism that gives them some headline that will get some clicks, etc. So each time I invited about 150 to 170 people, and from all walks of life. I mean, they aren't like people think, oh, by association, Gilda's friends are all very privileged and wealthy. Absolutely, I'm one of these people that, I have friends who are beneficiaries. I've got a very big variety of friends because I don't really care, what am I going to get, from my wealthy friends, for example. It's more of a character of a person that I'm attracted to, or a person that I can conversations with and, about meaningful things rather than just stupid, superficial stuff. So they were the people that were more confused on these oppositions. I mean, we've had Labour and Green at the helm, so they don't really need a coverage from my perspective. They've had every opportunity out there. But, it is very different when you meet a politician in person and you ask your concern and question and you get to watch how they answer it. If they are like sort of like trying to weave out of your question, answering like a politician, or they are answering it like a human being who has concern rationally and, with respect to you and your question without trying to, discount it. And a lot of these people, they employ very many people, they are teachers, they are involved with a whole bunch of other people. And I think for them, it was interesting, but they are from migrant communities, from India, from China. So for them, I think it was really sort of a great opportunity to attend to and voice their concerns. I wasn't promoting any of these politicians.
No, you're just facilitating a discussion.
Absolutely, because it is crucial to not go and be lazy and just vote because you've traditionally done so or because you've seen something on the media. No, go and answer yourself. And figure out and have a meet and greet and get to know this person or character, see how they are responding to you. Are they respecting you? Are they just treating you like a, idiot? All my guests, they really appreciate it. And there were different groups of people, some kind of cross, but mostly different. And I think it was very important for them. And it was really good to see politicians not standing at a podium, just talk and say whatever they want, that they practiced. It was good to not see politicians being hassled for, got you moment by journalists. It was very genuine, one-on-one, concerned citizen talking to their politicians who are, wanting their vote. I think it worked. It was for both, it was great. And a lot of people came back and gave me feedback on what they thought or, how they perceived it. And it helped people to be more informed. And when they're going to vote informed. If they didn't like this certain group of people that came and talked in my house, the opposition right party, for example, center right, then if you're voting Labour, then vote informed, knowing who you're voting for.
Absolutely. And so what was the impression you got? Let's just go through them. You've had Matt King. What was your impression of Matt King and how he engaged with the people at your house?
I really like Matt. I think he was being very genuine. He was being honest. He was down at the protest. Yeah. I feel like he's one of those guys who's not afraid to, talk about his opinions, and he's not playing a political game. He's not playing political games. So I liked that it was genuine. He had a lot of good stuff to talk about in regards to the farmers and, the rural New Zealand. It was really good. And then we had David, who...
David Seymour,
yes, David Seymour from AG. He was an old friend of mine. Really good. He talked more about the co-governance and, and people had different questions for him. Some he was comfortable to answer, some he didn't want to answer or address really. He was not too comfortable to get involved with certain questions. Winston Peters was very frank. He came very well prepared and well sort of, we had some people in the crowd who are voters of Green or say Labour, and they were asking some hard questions, and he had all facts and figure in a file he brought with him, so he was very well prepared. And I think people liked how frank he was. Now there are people who say, oh, that's his job and he's been in politics for a long time and he knows what to say. Correct, but I listened to him and I had my questions, people had their questions, and I didn't find anything to doubt him even for a second. But that's my right as a person. Maybe you don't like his policies or the way he's approaching things. And then we had Simon O'Connor, who was amazing. He came with 5 of the candidates for national in different area, like Mangere, like different areas. There were amazing women, extremely inspiring. One of them had 5 kids, had 3 degrees, came from a migrant family. 11 of them slept in the same room, house. They all had very amazing, genuine, interesting stories. We had a lovely lady, she was Maori, and she was wonderful. Like her journey also was inspiring. Really good group of, one lady was Chinese, and all of them had these amazing stories of struggle and extremely high achievers. All kind of had children except one. She was the youngest. And it was really good to see a different side of National rather than just seeing, say, Chris Luxon on TV and, in New Zealand, and Chris Luxon this and Chris Luxon that. It was good to see, okay, who are these people behind National also? Very diverse, really cool. And Simon himself is very frank. I did some activities and attended to some protests for, freedom and human rights for women and generally in Iran. And he was kind enough to help the Iranian community and actually attend these protests. So he's a lovely person, and his view also is very humane and rational about what happened during the COVID time and the vaccines, etc. And Yeah, really heartwarming, the questions he answered very honestly and thoroughly. He didn't sound like a politician. He sounded like a very caring human being. Yeah, so I guess, but other people who were there may not agree with me on certain things, and that's fine, as
That's
long
their
as,
right.
as long as you make your decision informed.
Yeah.
That's all we want. We can't dictate our thoughts and ideology to other people. We can make them aware, but that's all we can do.
It's interesting, too, that the things you've just said about Simon O'Connor, because the ACT Party is standing Brooke Van Velden in the electorate against Simon O'Connor. And it's your electorate. Yeah. He's your MP.
Yeah.
And the ACT Party and the media have painted Simon O'Connor as some sort of religious weirdo who's anti-women. But your comments suggest that he's got a deeper kind of compassion and will stand up for rights and freedoms, particularly for women, which is in complete opposite of what, A, the ACT Party is saying, and B, what the media are saying.
Again, that's why in the first place I had these gatherings, because what comes out of media or on the platforms of, this politician who go on TV or whatever, it's not necessarily what you experience in reality with these candidates and these people. And Simon is a great example. I don't know any other politician, male, who's been more active on helping us in our journey towards bringing awareness and getting some help for Iranian women in Iran. He's been extremely supportive. He's showed up. He's put his time. Very, very respectful. I've never ever experienced anything from him to give me that impression that he's not otherwise, or he's got anything against women. And all the candidates that he came with, they were all women, and they had a lot of respect for him. So yeah.
It's an interesting observation, because that's the problem we've got in New Zealand society, is that people inform themselves through the lens of the media. And we've seen during COVID just how shameless the media are at actually following the government line or an agreed narrative. And that's the narrative they've built about Simon O'Connor. And yet here's a very personal view from someone who was in your house that's completely different from the narrative that the media have shown us. And it tells me that it's more important to actually bother to go and engage with politicians directly or via sort of meetings like this. And I mean, that's how I've been working in politics all my life, was I take people as I find them, and you develop a personal relationship with them by engaging in discussion. And you might not agree with them 100%, but you may find them to be different people to what they've been portrayed in the media. And I've found that. And now you're explaining that as well, which is great. It's fantastic to see. And I guess that's one of the benefits of your, what the media call soirees at Gilda's house.
Well, I know it sounded, a lot of people are like, what is this? Why are they calling you this? But at the end of the day, I think, again, it was like how they, in the sports section, they put down that we went down to Wellington for the protest. This was, I think, again, as a social article, but from that window, and I want to thank the editor for allowing the Q&A to be, they put it in the article as it was. And I was very grateful. And I was like, wow, that's although I talked about WEF and stuff like that, but I was amazed that Herald actually went ahead and put it in as it was. And, they didn't, I thought, discounting all the funny, little digs in the house price and stuff like that. I was grateful that I actually wrote or printed my words or put it out there, which was good. I think that's a little bit of a victory. It's a bit of a change.
Yeah, and some of those words, I mean, let's look at the quote. One of the ones that has made me want to give you a call and get you on the show. you said that you wanted to see the maintenance of personal freedom of speech, autonomy and respect for human rights and equality, clear positioning of political parties on co-governance, and a comprehensive agenda on our education curriculum within schools.
Yes. I think these are...
Yeah, no, go ahead. That's quite a broad range of things, but the first thing that you said was personal freedom of speech and autonomy.
It is important, especially, Kiwis, again, they don't know how lucky they are. When you look at New Zealand, we are in an environment, we are in a type of country where we can actually approach our politicians. We can go to this gathering, we can invite them to our houses and have this one-on-one personal connection with them and address our concerns. But when you look at a country like Iran, or you look at Mexico, these big countries, politicians are surrounded by guards and nobody can go near them. They're never in, smaller settings, they are just untouchables. But in New Zealand, it's not like that. And not to take advantage of this freedom and this opportunity that we have is really our loss if you don't, go hard and get there. At the end of the day, if you have a business, you want to employ people. If you go and meet them, you meet your, child's teacher, you meet people, we want to employ or give our lives to or trust, or, we meet them in person and get to know them. But why is it so different? These politicians are in charge of our lives. They are there to represent us. They are the public servants. We should be able to, not make a big deal of, oh my God, why do you invite them to your house? And that's ridiculous. So why? Why is it ridiculous? It is our right to practice it. We should take advantage of our freedom. Every single person in this country matters, regardless of their religion, their race, their background. Everybody's opinion and, power matters. If they can vote, they can make a decision for the rest of us. So, I really encourage people to be less shy about politicians and get involved with them a bit more personally.
I mean, that's what I've always done. And I was encouraged by that, not by my father being involved in politics, but by my mother. She would say to me, just talk to these people. And by talking to people, you can find common ground. And I think that's one of the things that's been lacking in New Zealand society for quite some time, with this polarization and, segregation and racism that's just very nasty. We've forgotten how to talk to people. And that's why freedom of speech is so important, because we've got these abilities to speak and we should speak. And you've been doing that with the politicians by having them in your house. You engage with them on Twitter and other social media. But that's what more people need to be doing. We need to be actually talking with these politicians face to face so that they will listen to us instead of telling us and giving us orders and telling us what to do. And doing things that, I think you used the term, basic human decency. And some of the things that have been done in the last, particularly the last 4 years, are completely against basic human decency.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that got me really, I was so disappointed and I was shocked by hearing it, was that, I remember there was like a protest. It was a Black Lives Matter protest. Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
We had one in Auckland, I think. And around the same time, there was this policy, I think it was a week after, I can't remember, that came out that, if you get COVID or if you're unwell and you go to the hospital, if you're Maori or Pacific Islander, you automatically will, go through the emergency faster. And I was like, wow. So you virtual signal and you say Black Lives Matter in midst of COVID, but Black lives don't matter if you're from Somalia. If you're from Ethiopia, that doesn't matter anymore, right? Because if your child is sick or your grandmother is sick and they go to hospital, they won't fall into the category of Pacific Island or Maori. So what kind of a virtue signaling is it? Does it matter or does it not matter? Which is it? Don't give that thing and then go and preach the other thing. Or, your actions and behavior should kind of go hand to hand with your words if you are politicians. But yeah, that was, especially as an immigrant, when I look sometimes, I just feel so disturbed by how, certain conversations continuously is revolving around race. Why? For years, we've educated our children, we've, educated our societies that race doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter, what country you are. We are all equal human beings. We all have rights as human beings. We're expected to be heard, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden, the whole conversation is gone to race again. It's like paddling backward. Why pedaling backward? Why are we doing this? Which is disturbing, again, especially as sort of an immigrant who wasn't a colonizer. Why are you in the midst of this, getting overlooked?
The funny thing is, Gilda, is you call yourself an immigrant, but your beliefs about human rights and getting along with everybody and all, that's the way New Zealand used to be. And you're calling yourself an immigrant, but you're actually more Kiwi than most Kiwis are.
Yeah, but I think I do that by default, because every time I open my mouth, people say, like especially online, go back to Iran, and, foreigners don't tell us what to do, etc. Although, like, some of those people probably weren't born when I came here, and I've always studied hard. I worked hard, paid my taxes, employed people, I've always done the right thing in my head as a responsible citizen. I've never ever infringed on, other people's rights. And people have this thing, oh, you married somebody rich and you're, you don't know anything about anything, and, what qualifies you, and you drive a nice car, which is ridiculous, because how is that a measure of anything?
It's just not.
I'm not putting any burden on you as a taxpayer, am I? No, I'm contributing. I'm helping the wheel of economy in this country. I'm employing people. If anything, you shouldn't be criticizing me. What have I taken away from other people? But, we have charities. Why is none of that, in people's view, a good thing? But, they criticize you for it. So what do you want me to do? Be, I don't know, a gang member? Would you respect me more?
I think they just want you to shut up. I think they just don't like that your opinions, and it would be best if you just shut up. I mean, that's what happened to me. We've both gone through similar things. And if they don't like what you're saying and they can't challenge you with logic or rational thought or a cogent argument, then they just tell you to shut up. And it's unedifying, it's unpleasant. But people like yourself keep on speaking, because if you stop speaking, they win. So it's better to keep speaking.
Yeah, I'm not. It doesn't bother me, the comments, but it's interesting though when you think about it. Everything that I'm saying is because I care for my fellow citizens and I care for this country and the future of it. I have a lot of kind of wealthy friends who actually don't care. They're 6 months overseas and they don't get involved. They're like, oh, whatever, let them be. But yeah, I can't do that, because to me, it is one of the most important, duties a human being can have, a decent human being can have, to care about the community and fellow citizens, regardless of religion and ideology. It's, our basic rights.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, basic human rights and decency. And for too long, our major political parties have not shown us that. And that's why we're seeing a rise of some of these smaller parties that are there, that are actually practicing what they preach. And this election, hopefully some of them will get into the parliament and we can have a bit of a change. I certainly think we're going to see a change of government, absolutely. But what that looks like is up to the voters. And that's where your comment earlier, when you said inform yourself, get yourself some knowledge about these politicians, choose someone that reflects your values or as close to your values as you can get, and make sure you vote. Because if you don't vote, you really have got no right to complain.
You're absolutely correct. And I hope and I wish that we see more people kind of stop looking at this as like a rugby game. It's this team versus that team. Oh, I'm in this team, I'm in that team. Or, like one of these programs on TV that people are so used to, the format of, voting for people. Because it's definitely not that. Everybody who's out there, whether they're Green Party voters or Labour, majority wants, they have good intentions somewhere.
We all want the same thing. It's just how we do it.
Yeah, but, step into reality and check it out and see exactly where these promises are made. Are they going to be deliverable? Are they going to stick by them? These politicians out there, have they promised certain things that they've already delivered? Look at this basic stuff. And then if you still choose to choose whoever you want, then that's fine. But go and don't treat it like a sports team. Just because you traditionally have voted national, it doesn't mean you necessarily, you just go and tick the box. See what they're standing for, what they're telling you. Do you trust them? But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully people will make the right decisions and we'll have a better, diverse group of people in power who actually care about our individualities and our rights, and also about our country. We don't want what happened in Sri Lanka to happen here. I always say, we're a country of 5 million people in 2 isolated islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And we are exporting meat, feeding, it's like the kitchen of the world almost. And then I go to Indonesia and I'm like 120 million people or whatever. India, the population is
over
in
a billion.
Yeah. And not only, for example, India announces and says, hey, we are actually dropping our environmental measures and we are going to use more coal, right? And then what exactly are we doing as a 5 million people to put our farmers in jeopardy, put the economy of our country for an ideology with 5 million people across just 2 islands? We are not even collectively, we are not even one neighborhood in India or China or Indonesia or Iran. 85 million people in Iran. Tehran, the city I come from, it's got about 18 million people to 20 million transitory. It changes.
Yeah.
So, they're not making any measures. Why should we put people in our country who are feeding the world out of, their livelihood and inflict so much uncertainty and, worry and pain and poverty because our politicians want to jet off to Davos and be like, oh, good job, you listen to us. Well, why? I just don't see the, logic behind it. It doesn't make sense, however you look at it, for the interest of people in New Zealand. I think look after our people and interest of our people first. When you're in a position where, there is no poverty, we don't have homeless, the children are taken care of, families have jobs, we don't have our youth going and using drugs and ram raiding. Once we fix that, then let's talk about the global issues. Not right now. We can't even fix our own society, and we're worried about the global issues. I don't understand it.
Yeah, we can't fix up. If we can't fix potholes, how can we fix global issues?
Exactly. There you are.
Yeah, and I think that's probably about where we should leave this, on those positive notes about voting and freedoms and all that. And look, Gilda, I appreciate your time today, and I think that the Reality Check radio listeners will appreciate seeing a little bit about who the real Gilda Kirkpatrick is.
Hi, Cam. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and, giving me time to express my way. Although what I'm saying is most people are aware about it. They know about it. However, some people are a bit shy. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about what their fellow, colleagues, etc., might think of them. But I think none of this is made up. Everything that I'm saying is actually in practice. It is happening right in front of our eyes. We've experienced it. The information is out there. All we need to do is people to just take a bit more responsibility and educate themselves and be informed, because this election, I think, is a game changer.
Yeah, game changer. It is very important, and 5 weeks to go and only 2 weeks to go till voting starts. So it's very important that people are involved and informed, and that's the reason why I have people like you on my show. So
thank you so much, Gam.
Thank you. What an amazing woman, coming from Iran and building a life in New Zealand. She has a world perspective about the importance of freedoms and cherishing and protecting those freedoms that only a person who has experienced totalitarianism for themselves has. Let's hope we hear more from Gilda. Don't forget to send comments on Gilda's interview to inbox@realitycheck.radio or text to 2057.
This is The Crunch with Cam Slater. Conversations with a side of controversy, right here on RCR.